Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I'm, of course, your host, the World of Tanks Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Turtle Mark 1, a Tier 8 premium British heavily armored tank destroyer. Now, there are currently a lot of heavily armored British tank destroyers in the game. We start at the AT2, the AT8, the AT7, etc., all the way up to Tier 10, even being the Badger. Now, I really wanted to love the Badger. It's actually one of my most played Tier 10 vehicles, sitting at 616 games, and that's because I always pull it out thinking that I can do well in it, and then I just proceed to not do well. It's kind of like a false hope that I always have that the Badger will do pretty good. And while it does have a lot of good things, like really good DPM at 3,450, great hull down potential with 10 degrees of gun depression, and very, very solid upper plate armor, the Turtle Mark 1 seems to be just a Badger at Tier 8, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, I'm going to say this tank is probably going to come within the next 2 or 3 months, which isn't too bad for Blitz standards. They're probably going to test it, see how it performs. Personally, I think that this tank seems very, very strong, if not a little bit too strong, but that's up for you guys to decide in the comments as well. Let me know what you guys think, but let's get straight into the statistics. Now, for hit points, this is a very, very high hit point tank destroyer, sitting at 1,400. That means if you are running the hit point buff, 1,484. Now, of course, the main reason for that being is because this is meant to be ran frontline like a heavy tank. Sitting at 1,400 gives you just about 500 less than some of the most heavily armored heavies, like, let's say, the VK100 or the VK168, so it's not too bad on the hit points. It's actually quite good. So it's going to be able to take a couple punches, about 3 or 4 shells from an IS-5, and that's if they're shooting heat, of course, which, when we get to the armor, you will see it does have quite impressive armor. The damage per minute is fantastic. Now, of course, the AT-15 will still be the king of DPM by about 500. This tank has 4,000 DPM, which is quite ridiculous when you do think about it. That is some of the most DPM, in fact, the most tier for tier you will find, way more statistically than the SU-122-54 if you compare the tiers and hit points. But this vehicle sitting at 3,458 is no slouch. That is going to easily punch through enemies, and of course with the very nice 232 millimeters of standard pen, that's pretty dang good, especially with the premium being at 263. You're really not going to have to run calibrated, which I would highly suggest you don't, because yeah, Cali is going to bring it up quite a bit on the standard, the 244 and 276 on the premium, but it doesn't seem like it's going to need calibrated all too much with how much pen it does have for the tier 8 class. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that it's dealing 330 average damage, which is actually a really nice alpha. It's not like the AT-15 where it's sitting at a lower alpha of 225, but you're punching out shell after shell after shell. This tank at 330 is going to be having a pretty quick reload of only 5.73 seconds. That's almost the same reload as the T62A, which is 2 tiers higher. So it's got a really good reload for the alpha it has, which means that you should be able to still permatrack people, but as well be able to trade with vehicles, let's say, like IS-5s, IS-3s, vehicles that deal 400 average damage. It's going to be nice on both of those aspects. Something that I'm very, very excited for is definitely that alpha, and the HE at 430. Ooh, that's going to hurt quite a bit, but unfortunately, it does not carry HESH shells, which, yeah, does kind of suck. Velocity, as well, is not great. 792. What the absolute heck? Yeah, that's not good. So you're definitely going to want to lead your shells, or you can put on Supercharge, which is going to boost that shell velocity all the way up to 1,030. So that's one thing to definitely keep in mind. But yeah, that shell velocity is not great. The premium at 991 shell velocity, still for a PCR, isn't the best. That's one thing I didn't actually notice until looking now. Yeah, that shell velocity is awful, so that's one thing you're definitely wanting to keep an eye on when you are playing this vehicle. And the penetration loss over distance as well is quite large, but of course HE has no penetration loss over distance. But again, man, that HE is so slow on the shell velocity. That might be a big balancing factor, but at the same time, you're running this thing quite frontline, as you'll see when we go take a look at the armor. So yeah, I can see why they don't want it being a camp-like vehicle. I definitely understand that aspect. Now, the aiming time and dispersion are fantastic. 1.72 seconds base aiming time and 0.29 seconds or 0.29 on the dispersion is fantastic. But a good example of a vehicle that also has good statistical values going for it is the FE2-7 Badger. This vehicle has got a good aiming time at 3.4 seconds and great dispersion at 0.299. But you don't think of it, but the on-movement dispersion values, which the Badger has, and as you can see here, these on-movement dispersion values are awful. They're just like the Badger, which cause it to be very, very poor when you're moving and turning the vehicle. However, a difference is that, unlike the Badger, this tank has great on-movement rotation of the gun. So if you're sitting still and you're moving the gun to the left or the right, it's still going to have a very, very good time of shooting enemy opponents. Not too bad overall. Now, gun depression, 10 degrees is fantastic. That means it's going to be very good on its flexibility, of course, just like the Badger. And 20 degrees of gun elevation means that opponents will not be able to get above you either. So really good on the gun values. Very, very nice there. And that's one thing I do like about a lot of the British tank destroyers, is that while they might not be very mobile, they do have decent gun depression, at least for the Tortoise. You've also got that for the AT-15, the AT-15A, and as well the Badger. So pretty good things going for it there. The tank is very, very heavy, only weighing in, or should I say, weighing massively in at 60 tons. That means that it will be decent for ramming. No, it's pretty dang good there on the weight. And as well with the turret traverse speed, it's not great at 24.3, but of course it is a fixed gun, so the turret traverse doesn't really matter. It doesn't even have a turret. Speed forwards, 20. Yeah, I'm guessing a lot of you thought it was going to go 30 because it looks like a Badger, and honestly, I expected it to go 30, but that is going to be a big balancing factor. It is going to be very, very slow, causing it to lag into battle position, and the issue isn't your tank being slow getting into position. The issue is your team dying before you are able to support them, because that's one thing, let's face it, a lot of teams do end up doing nowadays, is you'll run a slow vehicle, let's say like the Badger, and by the time you get into position, your tanks are dead, or they've left you in the dust, which causes you to get flanked and die. So that is one of the big killers, but tier 8 isn't as bad for being flanked or getting left out in the open. Reverse speed at 10, yeah, that's also going to suck. So the mobility on this tank is not great. The power to weight ratio, it's decent, like 11.28 isn't good, but it's also a very slow vehicle as it is. So the power to weight ratio really isn't going to make a difference on any of these. Traverse speed though at 31.59, yeah, not great. 27.38 on medium and 19.55 on soft. Oh, that's really not good. Yeah, this is a really, really slow and chonky vehicle. The gun depression is good. The armor, though, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about now. Because, of course, if it's slow, it's got to have good armor, and wow, look at that red. So, just on flat ground, that upper plate is 265. Now, granted, that means that vehicles like the IS-5 will easily, yep, I'm repeating myself, I'm like a broken record today, but an IS-5 will easily be able to load heat right onto the upper plate and penetrate it as long as it's running calibrated. So that is one nice thing. The upper part, though, 272 up there, it's really, really thick, as you can see on certain spots. That will be very nice. If you're angling it, yeah, it's going to be about 280 on the edges of the track, and the upper plate about 280 as well. That's very, very nice. You can use just about an angle there to aim at people still. Your upper plate's about 270-ish, and yeah, that's pretty dang impressive. And as well, this tank doesn't really have a lower plate. Like, it does, you know, you can shoot that right down there, but overall, if you're using the 10 degrees that this vehicle is given, this is where this thing is going to be a powerhouse. Let's get that all set up. So that's about the 10 degrees you're using. That upper plate, 350, nothing is penning that. Only tier 9 heavies and tank destroyers will be reliably penning that upper plate. As you can see, that top bar at 295, again, pretty much all tier 8s are not going to get through that whatsoever. You've got this bar down here, 297, yeah, good luck getting through that. This, of course, is going to be hidden. The only part you can reliably penetrate at that point is the mantlet, which as well is going to be very, very tricky to hit if this tank's wiggling back and forth. So, what do I have to say about the Turtle? I'm very excited for it. I think that it's going to be an extremely strong tank, and with the immense DPM that it has, a really, really good vehicle. But one thing I will bring up, a big difference between the AT-15 and the Turtle, is the on-movement dispersion is quite a bit better on this vehicle. Its aiming time is really good, so it will be a little bit better for this tank, especially with that crazy, crazy DPM. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you think the Turtle will be hot stuff and you're very excited for it, or not so much. I would say that if it comes out for crates, do not spend your money until I make my video on the review, because, of course, some people like to spend their money on trying to get their hands on a tank. Don't spend your money on tanks until reviews have been made, because you might find out that you've spent 50 bucks on a tank that absolutely sucks. So definitely wait for the final review on this vehicle, but this is just a little bit of a refresher to let you guys know my personal opinions, ideas, and everything else behind it. I think it's actually decent where it's at. I don't think it's going to change in testing. Maybe it'll be a little bit faster, but I really can't see them making it go faster with the second highest DPM in Tier 8, great aiming time, and all these other values. It seems pretty good where it's at, especially with that ridiculously strong frontal armor, but we'll have to see how it is when it does come out. Hopefully all of you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, as I like to keep you guys up to date on the newest and most relevant information, like the AE Phase 1 and the Object 907 will be soon, but hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.